Welcome. Welcome. Yeah, I was going to say, I need my own theme music. Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, February 7th, 2023. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Inkakatma, and the Sil people. I'll get that right one of these days. Number 2, adoption of minutes. Committee of the Whole meetings, minutes January 17th, 2023. Recommendation that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting be held on January 17th, 2023 be adopted. Councillor Charney, Councillor Ogan, any errors or omissions? Nobody found any this time? Yeah, excellent. All those in favor? At least we read them. Those opposed? Good. And it's nice that you guys actually, CAO Smith said it was refreshing that people actually read them, so there you go. General matters, delegations and recognitions, don't have any. We recognize no one tonight. Unfinished business, none. New business, housing update. And this will come from Sean Strang, Steve Shell, Nick Drev, I'm going to kill your name, Dragovich, and from the recovery team to present on the post-flood situation of housing. Gentlemen, one and the other. You're up, Mr. Strang.
That was impressive. I wasn't actually going to try Nick's name. He's always Nick. So I'm just here to actually introduce the housing team here. I will not be giving any of this presentation, thankfully. Steve Shell, I'm not sure some of you may have met. Steve has a very large history through a lot of emergency management, lots of BC wildfire and other things. And Steve comes to us, I don't even remember how long Steve's been here, but it's been quite a while on different files. And Steve is leading the housing program. And then Nick is with Collier's project management, handling a lot of the delivery schedules and whatnot. So they will be presenting today, and I will be taking a back seat.
Great. Well, thanks, Sean. Mayor, council, staff, thanks for inviting us today. So we just want to give you a little bit of an overview and then give you some time for some questions afterwards. So first of all, we'll go to the next slide, please. Sure. So in terms of the agenda for this evening, we just want to talk about the project team itself, give you an idea of how this organization is being run, provide a bit of an overview in terms of the Transitional Evacuee Manufactured Home Program, calling it TEMP. We'll speak about phase 1 and 2 of the application process, share some information about the manufactured home locations because we're getting lots of questions about that. Speak to the delivery schedule in terms of the houses being delivered, and in other supports, we'd like to share that with you as well. So let's go to the next slide. So in terms of the actual organization itself, we're supported by CAO, Sean Smith. So he is leading the charge, and he is leading the Director of Recovery and Mitigation, Sean Strang, who has a team working directly for him. Under communications, we have Kim Mullen supporting the team, and we're looking at getting a special project coordinator or community liaison. It hasn't been identified yet. We'll have that in place at some point. I won't speak to the other pieces of project management or finance, but I'll speak directly to the housing side of the business. So there's myself kind of leading the initiative. We have a housing coordinator, Nick. We have a housing specialist, Cheryl Johnson. And then we have tenant support liaison, Megan Nelson-Smith, who's working with Ask Wellness, who's supporting our team. So that's how we're basically running this initiative. Next slide, please. So in terms of the evacuee, or the Transitional Evacuee Manufactured Home Program, approximately 130 households were still living in temporary shelters last summer. And many of those were outside of the community. Many of those individuals that did lose their homes were in mobile homes at the time. The City of Merritt worked on a plan to transition displaced residents off Red Cross emergency supports and enabled residents to return to their home in their community. The city was provided with $8.5 million from the Minister of Municipal Affairs to develop a strategy to provide 70% market rate housing and replace some of the housing stock that was lost due to the flood. A transitional evacuee manufactured home program was then developed and the city was able to purchase 31 manufactured homes to provide temporary, subsidized housing for eligible flood-impacted homeowners and renters. And I just want to speak to that piece, is that this allowed the individuals that were able to pay the rent to apply for this program in Merritt. The new homes are currently being installed at Diamond Vale Mobile Home Park at 2776 Clapperton Avenue, and they'll continue until March the 7th. Accepted applicants will have the opportunity to buy out the contract at any time after 4 months up to the end of the term. So now I'll pass it over to Nick to go through the next part.
Thank you, Steve. So the timeline. So this project was initially proposed in January of 2022, and funding was approved shortly after at the end of March for the whole program. May 25th, the initial RFP closed. No suitable bids were received, and as such, the program was overhauled and adjusted. On July 25th, various land options were evaluated, and at that time, the decision was made to locate the homes at Diamond Vale Mobile Home Park. October 3rd, the second RFP closed, and our current contractor, Silver Mountain Contracting, was selected as the successful bidder. January 24th, we had our first home delivery, and since then, we've had homes arriving just about every day since, and we're expecting to have the last home arrive on March 7th. So phase one of the transitional housing program is intended to help flood-impacted individuals to transition to permanent rental or owned housing prior to December 31st, 2024. Over 115 potential impacted residents were contacted from information provided by both the City of Merritt caseworkers and Canadian Red Cross. Application form was provided to those seeking information to assist the city to confirm eligibility and rank applications based on the greatest need. Some of the questions asked were current home status, current living conditions, mobility issues, household numbers, children in school, and commute to Merritt. Of those 150 residents contacted, 47 applications were sent out, and to date we have now 19 phase one applicants who have been approved and waiting for a move-in date. The phase one homes are being offered at a rental rate of $1,300 per month, which is below what we consider market value in Merritt to be around $2,000 for like homes. That $1,300 a month will include property rental, insurance, and lawn care and snow removal. Phase two is now open to all residents affected by flood-induced shortages in Merritt. They've been asked to apply through Royal LePage, who is acting as our property manager, and who is going through their typical tenant screening process with references and such for these phase two applicants. The rent for phase two will be $1,500 for a two-bedroom home, $1,550 for a three-bedroom, and $1,600 for four-bedroom homes, which again are all below what we found to be market value for similar homes in Merritt. The idea is that phase one and phase two will have the right to purchase these homes after a minimum of 4 months renting and prior to the December 31st cutoff date. Did we skip a slide, sorry? My apologies. Yeah, sure. Anyways, so the city has engaged 2 other stakeholders to help with the program. The first being Ask Wellness, who is helping with applicant communication and optional move-in supports. The second is Royal LePage Property Management, who has been engaged to act as the landlord on the city's behalf. They'll be handling everything from occupancy agreement administration, rent collection, property maintenance, and occupant communication throughout the program.
Next slide. So just bring your attention to this map here. And like I said before, there's a lot of questions being asked about where's these trailers, where are they located, when did they arrive. So we thought it'd be relevant for the committee and for the city council to see where we're looking at in terms of locating the houses and where they arrive. So the red boxes represent the 31 lot locations where these 31 trailers will be located, 31 manufactured homes will be located. Our very first home was delivered on January 24th, lot 72. And the same day, lot 2 was delivered as well. At this point in time. We have, I believe it's 9 trailers on site, and there's more being delivered this week. So the good news is that we're getting diversity of 2-bedroom units and some 3-bedroom units that will be matched up with the residents that have gone through this program that we just spoke about. So we're making some great progress, and on Friday we'll be having a big media event, so that'll be an exciting day for us, and kind of talk about the initiative and share with the public in terms of what we're able to do. So this is pretty exciting for us to move forward with this initiative. And now you know exactly where these are and where they're being located. And you can see that they're being spread out throughout the community. You enter the trailer park over here off the street, and then the ferry, one of the houses we'll look at on Friday will be right there. So I'll just stop there and go back to Nick.
Awesome. So what you're seeing here in these pictures is actually the first home that was arrived. So the homes are coming on flatbed trucks. There's no cranes or hitches involved. The homes are put right onto flatbeds and driven out of the factory in Calgary over the mountains. Takes about a day to get here. And then what they're able to do is actually drive the home right onto site. We're driving underneath it. The truck has a hydraulic system that then allows it to lower and drive right out. The whole process takes about 15-20 minutes, and it's honestly quite cool to watch. I've been fortunate enough to be there for a few of these deliveries. And then on the right here is the inside of the first home. As you can see, they come fully finished with brand new appliances and modern cabinetry and finishes. They're quite nice homes.
Next slide. So in terms of the delivery schedule, like I said, the first house was delivered on January 24th, and all 31 are being sequenced right down to March the 7th. That's our plan right now, but we've been very flexible. As you know, logistics, getting these trailers from Calgary into Merritt and then getting them set up, there is logistic challenges, and so this is a bit fluid, but that's the goal, and that's the target, to have the last trailer delivered on the 7th, and then we have to hook up all the utilities and get it set up before we can have occupancy in these sites. So this is what we're working with closely with Silver Mountain Contracting, and so far the relationship's been really good, and we continue to make great strides in meeting these timeframes and working with the suppliers. So, next slide. And as you guys know, it does take a village. You know, when you pull off an organization like this, an initiative like this, there's so many people involved, and we are so fortunate to have some great volunteer organizations help us with this initiative. The Elizabeth Fry Society came to the table with the Society Rent Bank, and they're providing a donation to any of those in phase 1. There we go. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. People online, yeah.
Okay. So again, the Elizabeth Fry Society Rent Bank is providing donations to support these residents as they move into these trailers. So that will help them pay some of the costs associated with this move. So that's a great initiative on their part, and we learned about that, and we're working closely with them. Another amazing donation came from Crossroads Community Church, and they're providing a financial support, again, for those phase 1 residents moving into these houses. And it's going to range depending on the number of people that move in, but it'll be a process, and they've got it defined already, where they will go to the applicant, we'll work with the applicant through Ask Wellness. They fill out an application, it goes to Crossroads Church, they review it, and they work directly with the proponent. So they work directly to provide those funds. Again, amazing work. Samaritan's Purse, again, that organization is doing some great support in the community. They have an office downtown, and they continue to provide that one-on-one support for residents that need to ask questions or have any other issues with unmet needs. They supported the Unmet Needs Committee that we're part of, and we're working forward with them to make it move in a positive fashion to support those residents going forward. The Canadian Red Cross has an office in town. They continue to provide support as well. So additional rent support is available in that phase 1 applicants process that will be considered as a separate process for them. So that's a broad overview in terms of this initiative that Sean, Nick, and I wanted to share with council today. And we want to give you guys now an opportunity to ask any questions or clarification. We'll see if we can try and resolve those answers for you. So I'll stop there and open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. For myself, just a couple of real quick questions. Now, this is a 2-year situation, and I'm assuming that we will, at certain points in that 2 years, let people know how much time is left to make a decision if they choose to because we don't want to just all of a sudden say, oh, time's up, and go from there. So I'm assuming you don't want to have like a ticking clock, but you still want to, how are we looking at that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And, something that Sean brought up initially, that we need to get engaged with other clients like Ask Wellness to have that one-on-one relationship and support those people as they move forward. Connecting, reconnecting, how are things going? Are you paying your utilities on time? Do you need any support? Do you realize that rent is due in another 20 days? Those types of things, just to support those residents to be successful as they transition. And if they choose to purchase that unit, be there for them as well, to provide any kind of guidance and direction with other agencies or maybe with financial facilities, financial institutions to get support. So Ask Wellness, Mayor will play a large role in supporting those residents with that one-on-one support and counseling available to them as needed. It's not forced upon them. Residents do not have to get support from Ask Wellness. They can go on their own. It's just there for them to provide that extra level. So yes, very good point. And yes, we have thought about it, and that's the process that's in place. And as well, staff, again, if the question comes to them, they'll be willing to provide some support as well, any kind of direction. So,
okay, thank you. Just one other quick question. If somebody is renting that rent money that they're paying does not go towards the purchase price of the house if they decide to buy it, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We were asked the question about that, and we did clarify that it is not rent to purchase. So yeah, that's not part of this initiative, unfortunately. It would have been a great idea, but it wasn't part of this initiative. It's just strictly you pay rent. After 4 months, if they choose to purchase the unit, they can start those conversations, and then we can move forward in that piece. It is a 2-year, but it does expire on December 31st, 2024. So some people that are registering a bit later won't get the full 24 months, or the full 2 years, because the program will stop. And at that time, again, if they haven't purchased those trailers, they would be given first right of refusal. And then if they wanted to purchase it, we'll support that transaction.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Charney?
I just have an aesthetic question. I see in the very first picture, you had a full-length porch. Will the full-length porch...
Go back to the first.
Where did it go? Oh, the next...
Yeah.
Will the full-length porch be part of every trailer?
So I'll tell you what, I'm going to let Nick answer that question. He was involved in procurement. I know the answers, but I'll let him answer that question.
Absolutely. A good question, yeah. Those photos were drawn from ATCO's website early in the program before we had final units, just to kind of demonstrate what we were bringing. Units we have purchased will not have a full deck. They will have a pretty large stair system going up to it, but the simple answer is no, they're not going to have a full-length deck in front of them.
Okay.
19 applicants have been approved,
Yes.
and so the 12 left are still in the process. How's that looking for the 31 total?
So that's phase 2. Phase 2, and that's going through Royal LePage.
Okay.
So anybody applying, it's offered to anybody in the city, they want to apply, they go to Royal LePage, fill out an application as you would when you want to rent anything. Your references will be checked, qualifications, and then if you're acceptable, then you go through them and get assigned a tenancy agreement, and that's the process that's in place.
Right.
Yeah.
So the last one's supposed to arrive on March 7th. When do you see people being able to move in, or you want to have everything pretty much settled, all 31 in place before applicants are allowed to be moving in?
Right, so yeah, so I understand. So in terms of the coordinating the move-in times for this, we are working directly with the supplier, Silver Mountain Contracting, because there's a lot of pieces that have to be put together, like all the utilities, working with power, hydro, gas, water, sewer, all that has to be organized. So the trades and sub-trades are working directly with the contract company, Silver Mountain Contracting, and we continue to dialogue with them back and forth to confirm when that site would be available for occupancy. You have to test the gas and everything. Once it's available for occupancy, then we'll have the conversation through Ask Wellness with the individual client that your move-in date is now confirmed as February 20th or February 17th, whatever it is. Right now, the window of time we've got for the very first 10 units is between February 17th and February 28th. Oh. So we're being, fingers crossed, everything goes okay. We should hopefully have the first 10 in by February 28th. So that's the goal. We'll see what happens. But like I said, the schedule, we keep adjusting that schedule based on logistics and other things that happen with any kind of construction project. And we continue to communicate with the residents through regular briefings, through email, and also working with Ask Wellness with that one-on-one dialogue with the residents.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Newman? Oh. Oh, you shut yourself up.
Thank you very much. Great job on this project. It's nice to see it coming together. My question is following up kind of on Council Petrosi's comments there. So if there were these 12 remaining applicants that could possibly go through to the second phase and Royal LePage is handling them, are they then open to all Merritt residents or strictly to those dealing with the flood?
Yes, Sean, come talk.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a kind of a breakdown on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the boundaries that we've been given with this program and what our provincial funder, our partners within the provinces have given us mandate for with this project. So there are a variety of housing projects that are needed in any city, and certainly within Merritt, after the flood, there is a large variety. You know, there was people that were underhoused before the flood. There was people who need to find roommates. There's people who have had rent grandfathered from 15 years ago at $400 a month and now are facing market rent. So there's a large variety of different housing situations in Merritt. Our particular program that we've been authorized to pursue is something that gives adds to the existing housing stock. So this hasn't been done in BC before. There's been some precedents of it in Alberta. Fort McMurray did a very similar thing with about 60 some homes. They went with full market rate. We've actually been able to work with our funding agency to do a subsidized market rate or below market rate offering. But the main purpose of this program is to provide physical homes for people who can afford something that resembles market rate. So phase one, the difference between those two is phase one people have been directly impacted by floods, and that was identified through listing the whole Red Cross list of all the people that they were helping, all the people that we were helping through our resiliency center, communicating. I think there was like 400 and some people on all those lists, and directly communicated with 100 and some. So we've done a lot of due diligence in trying to encompass all those people that were directly affected and make sure that they at least knew about the program so they could evaluate whether they were a suitable fit for that program, whether they could afford a market rate and just couldn't physically find an accommodation in Merritt, which was and continues to be a fairly large problem. After that list, there are certainly people who have housing challenges, and there will continue to be people who have housing challenges who are not able to afford market rate. As I said, like I personally know somebody who was, I think it was $550 in a basement suite. Well, that basement suite will now go for $1,200. That person needs to have a different housing situation, have a roommate. So these are difficult conversations. This particular program is an interim program designed to get people into a situation where they know what the rest of their years are going to look like. So it's a very, very important differentiation. It's not meant to completely replace Red Cross housing. It's meant to provide physical homes for people who could not find anything in the community. So the phase two is for people who we're saying indirectly affected by the flood. You moved here, you got a job at the hospital, you got a job as a paramedic, etc. There's nowhere to rent. And trust me, as somebody who rents in Merritt, I know very well how difficult it is to find. So there is a ton of people in this community who are offered jobs, who want to live here, who need to move out because of whatever situation, who just can't find anything. Those are the type of people that phase two is open to. And that is why we have the two different levels of rent. There's a much more significant subsidy to directly affected flood residents. And then phase two is at a higher rate, still near market, but below market, but it does highlight the difference between the two.
Thank you. Okay. Good to follow up?
Yes, just still on this same topic. Sorry, Sean, thank you. So then, with phase two, when will we, because obviously applications are still going in and everything, will there be a follow-up reporting process on that? I'm kind of curious if it's more geared, obviously housing is an issue in Merritt, we know that, but I'm just wondering if there's an application process, if those that are low income might be shunned away from it because somebody, like you're saying, that is applied, say, at the hospital and has a good secure job, they obviously have higher incomes and then would find their suitability quicker in this process than somebody who is either a low income or struggles to find housing for those reasons.
Yeah, so there's a number of housing providers out there, BC Housing being the biggest provider that provides, housing stock for a number of different programs. And BC Housing has its own terms. Affordable housing is a specific term within BC Housing where a percentage of your rent, I think it's 30-something%, but a percentage of, your income goes towards rent. This isn't one of those programs that is designed to fit with a person's income. It's designed to be subsidized to a certain level of market rent. So the phase 2 is going through the normal property management. We're actually not, we're taking a hands-off approach on the phase 2. They're going through normal reference checks, credit checks, et cetera, et cetera. It's designed to increase the stock of housing in Merritt and hopefully really replace a lot of that housing stock, rental stock, at least in the short term, that disappeared in the flood, honestly, at the end of the day. The idea for these at the expiration of the program, we would like to sell them. They will be sold either to the tenant or on the open market. We obviously are highly motivated to see that they hopefully stay within the community, and then we will be using the proceeds from that into another housing project after that point. So it will be an ongoing investment into housing in Merritt. This is a long-term project, and it's a long-term project in any, you can go to Lillooet, you can go to Kamloops, you can go absolutely anywhere in BC, and there's a screaming need for housing projects. We're actually very, very fortunate in that we've been able to have some provincial money to move the needle on that, and you definitely will see it again. We can definitely bring an update probably in a few months' time once everyone's settled in terms of how the program is going as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Etcher?
Okay, so with the rates that you put out here, will this housing include the costs that the tenants have, that will be all their obligation, and then they pay utilities, like they'll just be a regular tenant? Will there be other obligations that they'll have to do?
Yeah,
be responsible for?
Yeah, a good question. Like I said, the 1,300 rent covers pad rental, housing insurance, lawn care, and snow removal. We've hired a third-party contractor to come handle that. Utilities will be on the tenant's responsibility. Utilities and SWG. I believe in the parks there, it's billed directly to the tenant. And that's one of the things we've engaged As Wellness to do, is they'll be helping the tenants to set up their utility bills with Fortis and BC Hydro and the City of Merritt to make sure that it's set up when they get occupancy.
And with these projects, after 4 months, if people have the options to purchase, a lot of these people maybe had their manufactured home or rentals, whatever kind of housing that they did have. Will there be any incentives offered to help them with their down payments when they have financing options, or is that too far in the future and maybe unknown at this point since this is such a new housing project? Any idea on that? Or?
I would say it's mostly unknown. Those are definitely conversations we're having, and we are working right now. Myself, Sean, Steve, and legal counsel are working to develop that buyout agreement that we'll have with the tenants. But at this time, we can't say for certain whether there'll be any incentives like that.
And is there any consideration or thought if there's a certain price per unit for purchase, maybe would it be market at the time perhaps, or maybe reduced as these people were maybe flood affected, or these are just too early to deduce? Or
I can say we are definitely having those conversations, and we're hoping to have those decisions made very shortly. And like I said, we are working with our team to make sure that we lay it out in a way that's fair for everybody in the program. But definitely know that's something we are working on, and I can't really speak to it in details right now.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It's just so many questions that people are going to have every day, and it's hard to know, but it's exciting to see this being available for people as early as the end of the month. So thank you for the information.
Absolutely.
So maybe just to tag on that information need, we do have a website, and Kim Mullen is doing a fantastic job keeping that updated. So we're trying to keep it as current as possible. So she is going to do that. We're going to do another refresh probably in the next few days. And like I said before, a media event on Friday. So yeah, communication will be key, and we'll try and keep that site, or we will keep that site updated with the best information we have as we learn more moving forward. And like Sean was saying, you know, this is the first time we've done this in the province. So we're working through this, we're learning as we're going. We're kind of still building the plane as we're flying it. And we're getting some good results so far. So this is all part of a team effort to try and get this right, but not do analysis to paralysis and wait till it's perfect. So we're moving forward, we've got big demands, and the priority is to get these people into some kind of housing. That's what's keeping us all motivated. That's our number one priority, is to support these poor people that have been in trailers or they've been on hotel rooms for a year and that. That's our priority, our driving force, to get them into some kind of housing as soon as possible. So, yeah, but a very good point.
CEO Smith?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add a bit of context without divulging any particular details here. There will be a difference between how we approach the buyout agreement for the phase 1 versus the phase 2 residents. And so council should fully anticipate that. We're going through the legal requirements here to make sure that the way we structure this is going to be as administratively manageable as possible, but also allow for a range of scenarios, prices rising, prices decreasing, whatever that is, and make sure that what we do is going to be fair and equitable. But I would anticipate that to the degree that supports exist, you would see them on the phase 1 side, and on the phase 2 side, it's going to look a lot more like a market transaction.
Councillor Charney.
This might be a question for Sean Strang. After the 19 of phase 1 move in, how many people approximately are still without housing that were directly affected by the flood?
It's probably a reasonable Steve question. The short version is we don't know, because Red Cross is the ones in charge of providing commercial housing support. So they do send us some updates. I believe the last update, there was about 36 people receiving some sort of commercial accommodation support. I think it is important, again, to say this isn't the same program as kind of the Red Cross commercial accommodation support. And honestly, the Red Cross commercial accommodation support isn't going to tell the whole picture either, because there's a number of people that aren't on Red Cross lists who are, you know, still with a family member or have chosen to go out of community for an indeterminate amount of time. I can tell you, I personally have been in contact with quite a number of people who are still out of their homes, and I can tell you their exact homes and where they're staying, and I know for a fact they're not on any list, any Red Cross list. So, short version, there's quite a few. This program addresses some, but of course we'll be working, this is program 1, which is about 3/4 of the funding that Municipal Affairs has given us for kind of a transitional interim housing. We will have at least one more project out of that funding stream, with the idea that more housing in Merritt will allow more people to move back to the community. Does that, I know it's not a number, but I don't have a number. So as much housing as we can add until everyone is here at an appropriate market rate, as if the flood never happened. That's our goal.
Yeah. I just thought that we would have a plethora of people applying and getting the mobile homes. I was really surprised to see that 12 did not get taken up.
There will be a very large number of people that are looking for it in phase 2, would be my suspicion at this point. I don't have numbers because honestly we just started into phase 2 at this point. We wanted to make very, very sure that we had all of our bases covered on phase 1 before we launched into phase 2. And I think a lot of that is the fact that this was designed and authorized as a near market rather than a affordable or free housing situation, because there are other government agencies who are providing that. And so we can't get into a situation, or the will isn't there to be in a situation where we're taking over authority from other government agencies. Nobody at the current time, and you're starting to hear people talking about the missing middle housing and that introductory housing. Nobody at the current time has been charged with that. The new BC Ministry of Housing is starting to talk about that, but really that's what this program is designed to do.
CEO Smith.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just wanted to add 2 points on that as well. First is that if there is anybody who has been or feels that they've been missed, put the applications in, and when it comes through here, they're going to get catapulted to the front of the line still. So if there's anybody out there in the world, as you guys are talking to people, they're saying, hey, what about me? What about me? Encourage them to apply. It's not like phase one is done and out forevermore. We are constantly wanting to understand people's circumstances and situations. So I'd say that is the first point that I wanted to add. And the second is that there are a lot of people that are working on their own homes, and so even though they're not in yet, they're making progress towards being in, or they're getting closer on that front. And so anecdotally, I've actually talked with a few who are, they're self-selecting and realizing that I don't know that I really need this, because while I would love a place for the next 4 months until my home is done in the summer, I don't need a 2-year program. My home is going to be coming back. I just am not quite there yet. And so there are a number of people who are self-selecting out of it just because of trying to, I think, really open this up for people who need it more. And so happy to see people doing that, despite the fact that, as you've said, there's needs still out there. I just think they recognize that this program is designed for a particular type of individual or family who needs a particular type of support.
So I'm not familiar currently with the average market rates. So I feel like the 3rd bedroom and 4th bedroom, they are affordable. But when we talk about this 2-bedroom, so 1,500. So what could be the average, market rate right now for a house in Merritt, for a 2-bedroom house in Merritt? I just want to compare.
So for a 2-bedroom like that, we're being told between $1,900 and $2,100.
That much?
Oh, yeah.
So when we went to the Olympic Villas, there was a 2-bedroom apartment for way cheaper than that, no?
15,
yeah. Anyway, so okay, I wanted to have to understand the rationale.
Yeah.
And the other question that I have is regarding after the 4th month, the tenant has the option to start the process for purchasing the trailer, right? So the asking price, is that going to be the same for those ones who decide to purchase after the 4th month versus the people who decide to purchase at the end of the 24 month?
So I don't have an answer for you, or we don't have an answer for you right now. Nick's talked about that. We're working through the process, and we're trying to get that nailed down. And Sean talked about the 2 different kind of processes for the phase 1 will be different than for the phase 2. So we're still working through that, and we're getting legal advice on that piece. And then once we've got that sorted out and ironed out, we will communicate that. So don't have a straight answer for you right now, but the wheels are in motion to try and get that sorted out.
Right. And if I can add to that quickly, like we said, we are looking at making this so that it's as fair across the board as possible. And one of the questions we are asking is, what if someone buys it in 2023 versus 2024? Because market values are going to be very different a year apart. So that is a big part of our conversation right now, is to figure out how we balance that and make it fair for people to buy at any point of the program.
And fair for the tenant to understand that when they are moving in, so that they can explore their options.
Yes, absolutely.
And my last question, it is regarding phase 2. I noticed that there was only one property management dealing with. So is that a rationale? We have 2 property managements here in town. So I just want to understand the rationale, just dealing with one.
I can address that. We actually went to an open RFP. So we actually did get bids from both property managers in town. And after evaluating both RFPs, we made the decision that Royal LePage was the better selection. Yeah, so we did receive proposals from both property management groups in town. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Let's say after 24 months, they decide to buy the trailer.
Yep.
They can now move that trailer anywhere they want, or does it have to stay in the park? I'm just wondering, do we have any idea on that?
So the answer is yes, they could move it if they wanted to.
Okay.
And if they wanted to stay, they'd have to have a relationship with Diamond Vale Trailer Park and set up the agreement in terms of keeping it there. So yeah, it's entirely, once they purchase it, it's entirely up to them what they want to do.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Also, how much cost, was there any cost incurred by the community to upgrade any part of the park before we start putting these in? Or was the park already up to snuff for these to go in? I'm just curious.
So, Sean, maybe Sean can speak to that.
So we did have a portion of the project budget was allocated toward making the site proper. Most of the utility hookups, like these were existing sites. There was a few things that needed to be done on site that we've done in the project budget, but mostly in terms of site leveling and getting it ready for a trailer, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fairly clear differentiation in a mobile home park. What is the responsibility of the actual mobile home park, and what is the responsibility of the tenants on site? And there's a few other things like driveways and whatnot that we've negotiated back and forth with the owner of the property in order to not incur capital costs that we would not be utilizing. So to answer the question, if there's assets that are improved that would be sticking around after the fact, the intent would not be for the city to pay those for the city to pay the bills for those. It would be for the city to pay the bills in the time period that we are taking those units in that 24 months.
Just one last question. At the end of 24 months, and we have some trailers that nobody's picking up, does the city have to sell those, or can the city hold on to those? And the only reason I'm asking is because, you know, we are talking about incentive housing for health professionals that come to our town, et cetera, or another small disaster where we can put people in a spot. I'm just wondering if it would be within the city's interest to hold on to 4 or 5 to be used as, come on up, Sean. I'm just wondering, and if we do decide to keep a couple, I'm assuming we have to pay the price for these, I'm assuming, just wondering.
A simple answer to that is the city owns these. At the end of the day, you guys are the landlord, the owner. So although the intent is to sell these off at the end and you know, give the housing stock back to the community, I see no reason why at the end of 2 years as owner, you might have to talk to the province, as they were the ones who funded you initially. But yeah, bottom line is you guys do own them at the end of the day.
I'm going to add a little bit of clarification. So there's a number of agreements and contracts that are, sorry, I'm coming in for the policy part. These guys are handling the execution of it, but in terms of where this agreement goes in the 2 years after and whatnot, a lot of that is between Smith and myself here. So these particular units, the city is the owner for these units, but the contracts that we've entered into are expiring December 31st, 2024. So for example, for the mobile home park itself, the contract to have these lots expires on December 31st, 2024. Additionally, the agreements that we've signed with our funding agency, Municipal Affairs, requires us to exit this program. And so in order to keep these units, it would likely require a rewriting of a contribution agreement, which would get fairly technical. They are okay with us exiting this agreement and cycling this money into another project, but the preference is for the city not to become a permanent landlord in this particular facility. For the city not to, yeah, the preference from the province, sorry, is for the city not to become a permanent landlord.
Thank you. CEO Smith?
Thank you. I think that I'm going to say it's probably the most unique silver lining out of this has been the strong support from the province on exactly that, in saying that we're going to provide funding for this, but there's been an understanding from the outset that this was going to allow for rollover funding for further housing programs in the city afterwards. And so I think that while I totally understand your point here that most of them would roll over and maybe there's an opportunity to hold on to 2 or 3, as Sean said, we could have a discussion about that for sure. But the idea here is that we might be able to just take those funds, roll it into creating more housing stock, which if there's demand for it, that is probably going to be both the recommendation from staff as well as what the province would most like to see, because they want to see the dollars spin off into more housing at the end of the day. But if there's just no demand for the houses, maybe that would change the metric a little bit. So certainly something we can talk about as we get a little bit closer to 2024.
Councilor Newman?
2 questions is kind of rolling off that frame of thought there. How would that even work if there's already a landlord at the park and then we would be the second landlord? I think that would become very difficult. Oh, okay, sorry, thank you. That was one thing. And secondly, I'm just wondering, at what point will we be looking at doing a secondary housing study as far as needs once we've gotten through this and we see that we've accommodated phase 1 and possibly a portion of phase 2. I think we would probably want to do a full review of how many people were left either from the flood or what we're looking at as far as needs. I mean, I know with the new apartment that's been built up the hill, there is housing available now. So I'm just wondering what that time frame would be to revisit this as a whole to say how much more do we need to saturate the market or help with the market.
So if I could ask Mr. Smith to address that one?
Yeah, so first bit is that I think that really the ask is a housing needs assessment update versus the 2021 document that was completed. And so generally, without flood considerations, that's going to be a 5-year update document. That might get accelerated as a result of flood demands. That being said, where we largely know what housing supply was removed and the housing needs assessment was quite good with identifying what the outstanding needs were, we actually have a pretty good idea, we feel like right now, for what the housing demands are, as long as rents are still sky high, as long as people are saying, I can't find a place, we know that we still need to be hitting the button, but we know what we need to replace from the flood, and we knew what we needed to add before the flood. And so there actually is a pretty good metric in there. We just need to start adding some to the stock. So I would suspect that it wouldn't be a 2023 or a 2024 program unless you were asking for something that was a very specific flood report. And it would probably be, again, ordinary, it would be 2026 with a 5-year from the 2021 housing needs assessment. We might bump it up a year because of what had happened, would be my guess with that.
Councillor Richard.
I waited so long. I think I forgot my question, half of it. But Councillor Charney was mentioning earlier about 19 people having some of this that applied, and I think it's because we're already a year in and a lot of people have maybe moved on. But would there be an opportunity maybe of people who would be interested in buying that didn't move in right now? Because if the city ends up out of the contract and we end up having to sell, there could be a lot of people who end up renting that won't qualify for financing and things like that. But there may be people who are interested in buying who were affected, and maybe they have homes that they'll decide they have to deal with because they're still paying mortgages on them, but they're not repairable. Because I know there's a number of people like that living out of community in apartments because they couldn't wait, or they were living in a motel and thought it would be better to rent in Kamloops or Kelowna, but they still have a mortgage of a house that's in a flood affected area like Pine Street or something. I know of a number of those people, but with commitments of mortgages, I think people are reluctant to want to get into a rental commitment of 2 years.
I'll add on this one. I think that the actual purchase, unless it's one of the people who's moving in, it's going to happen at the conclusion of the term of this contract and agreement. So primarily people who are moving out at the end of this, those units would potentially go up for sale, and that would be the time to come in and buy. We're not really looking towards opening up any of these for immediate sale as part of this program. It just wasn't how the program was designed, or yeah, we're really aiming at a particular type of housing stock that was lost, and so that's the idea for right now.
Potentially you could end up with a tenant there for 6 months and then maybe a new person applies or something, perhaps?
Yeah, there's lots of options and permutations that could happen, but it'll likely start with rental, and then we'll play the game and see how it shakes out from there.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Any other? You have your light on. There we go. I guess that's it. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Sean. I know how hard a lot of the work has been, and it's been a tough go, and really impressed with everything you guys have done. I know it's been a lot of hard work, and you know, people of this community are lucky to have the three of you doing this and being there for them. So sometimes, you know, they're saying, you know, not all heroes wear capes. So do appreciate the hard work you guys have done, and I know it's been some long hours. So thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. Great. And council does as well. Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
You bet. Okay, well, again, thank you very much. So if there are no other items, which there aren't, and no other questions from council, I will call this meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.